Good morning, welcome to a morning outlook. This is Kim speaking on Wednesday, the 14th of June. Okay, so we've got a big day coming up. I say big day, big evening coming up because, of course, we've got the FOMC economic projection statement, Fed funds, and probably more important is the Fed press conference with Janet Yellen speaking. Now, already there's been a 0.25 increase priced in. It's 90%. I think it's more than 90% probability of that occurring on this particular meeting. So that's pretty priced into the dollar. It's what Janet Yellen says, I think, at 7:30 more than anything else, and possibly what comes out in the statement. So there'll be two key points of this evening's, this evening from a UK point of view. This evening's meeting, that will be the 7 o'clock, and the economic projections, of course, will be pretty key as well. But the statement will be what most people will be looking through very quickly at 7, and then, as I said, at 7:30, Janet Yellen will be speaking. Aside of that, got average earnings, claimant count change, employment data coming out this morning for the UK. So the average earnings being the most important aspect of the jobs report. Or employment report for 9:30, which would affect the pound dollar. 1:30, we've got inflation for the US. So there are a few factors which and core retail sales almost missed that. So there's a few things that may come out, give some volatility during the day. I would expect there to be largish periods of stalling going on up until the 7:30 news. Okay, and of course, if you're trading the New Zealand dollar, 11:45 UK time, it is the New Zealand GDP data. Right, so let's look at the technicals. And at the moment, the euro dollar, well, it's had 3 days of almost dot days, as I'd put them down to, almost 3 dojis in a row. So price has moved very small ranges. Is today the day it's going to push? At the moment, there's still indecision in the sense of what we're seeing. Yes, it's still in this bigger trend and looks bullish from that perspective, but really got to treat the day as it comes really to us. Coming down into the 4 hourlies here. Well, as I said, it's choppy and effectively, and you're seeing that this week from this week's price action. It's sort of up and down like a yo-yo, and I think you could see more of that as we run through today. There's the hourly probably sums it up the best. Absolutely no total clear move, although looking at we've got the daily pivot untouched below there at 112. 112.06, around that sort of area. May draw price post 8 o'clock. The ranges and the profit targets on these trades intraday at the moment, until we've got the FOMC out of the way, may be quite tight. We'll see. The inflation retail sales might give us a better kicker at 1:30. But I get a feeling this morning, unless something major happens, it could be we're in for a choppy morning. Okay, so at the moment we've run into yesterday's highs on the euro. That may stall things, and as I said, we may come back for that daily pivot. From there, we could just stay within the range that we've seen over the last 2 days, and that would be what I'd be looking at the moment. So if I did get short post 8 o'clock, I'd be, as I say, looking at a daily pivot, and maybe even yesterday's lows there in terms of the range, but we'll see how we run. Okay, the pound. So come up to bigger time frames. The pound got a bit of a kicker. It's run up, called the weekly pivot there. As I said, there's news out this morning on the pound, which may affect things. At the moment, it's still sort of done this ABC, sort of this lower high that's in there at the moment. Now, when we start moving back upwards, we're sort of looking, is it going to stop and continue in this sort of downward sort of trend that it's in? or we're going to see a break up higher. And at the moment, it's put, as I say, it's hit the weekly pivot. Potential for it to break up higher. Of course, down below us there's an untouched daily pivot, which would be a decent target if it starts putting in a reversal. We've got a bit extreme on the RSI here on our settings, but it sat in an extreme setting yesterday, pulled back, pushed back up there, um, worked that extreme off at that point, but it's still sort of it could just be holding up, and often the RSI would give us a bullish confirmation as much as anything, as you can see in the price anyway. But the fact that the RSI is sitting above its 50 area there and bouncing along suggests it's got strength at the moment, and again pushing up to an extreme. Any retracement may see us push back up that way. So that's the pound. Dollar yen. Dollar yen, well, again, it's getting into a tighter and tighter range day after day here at the moment. It's difficult to see a clear direction. In a bigger picture would still, from here, suggest downside on the bigger picture, and it's certainly a possibility. But short term, it's chopping away, and not at all clear for me to be. There's no obvious direction, as I say. So often when you come down to the hourlies, you can just see what we're dealing with at the moment. It's very choppy and picky, and the problem of trying to get into these markets as they are is that you can often just get chopped. You can see what looks like a nice setup, and a break of the 200 would look quite bullish up to yesterday's highs, and it's a possibility. But when it's as choppy as this, we could just get drawn in and dumped out. And the Aussie dollar's had a bit better move this morning. It's pushing through, most likely based on just as much the data, Chinese economic data is steady. So that's probably cheer for the Aussie dollar. But it had been pushing up of late. I mean, it has consolidated over the last 5 days. Still hasn't pushed out of that range. It may get to push out of the range. Let's have a look at the shorter time frames, and you just come down to the 4 hourlies. And well, the 4 hourlies doesn't paint necessarily a great picture. There's not a lot of range there. And 60 minutes, well, it makes it look, it flatters it basically here. And yes, it's had a decent run this morning, but it depends on what you call a decent run. It's actually moved roundabout, well, not a lot really, roundabout not a lot. It's a technical term that I use quite often in my updates, but the total movement there is 27 pips. It looks a lot, it looks lovely. It's there's not, I wouldn't suggest that's a big move, particularly as it's traded through one of its busier times. Okay, and finally, also I'll come back to that. I didn't really give you too much of an idea of where I was looking at here. Possibly yesterday's highs may just hold things for now, particularly with the Fed report coming out later. If it runs up to that area, it's a possibility. It's done that. It's already hit its daily pivot R1 for me. The dealing's done for the Aussie dollar. Not to say it won't push up higher or have a reaction, but it may just become a bit range bound as we wait for the Fed statement. And finally, the Canadian dollar. In fact, I just need to quickly look at the price of oil. It's almost a waste of time looking at the price of oil over the last couple of days relatively. It's flatlined at $46. It's come back to the Canadian dollar. And you'll see that the Canadian dollar's been pushing down. Let's bring the dailies into play there. And I drew the trend line on there yesterday, and well, sold off through yesterday, day before yesterday actually, big pun, sold off through the monthly S1, and at the moment heading down towards that S2 zone. Certainly some strength. It's mainly speakers that are driving this in terms of the rates, etc., interest rates, and the markets are getting the idea that some of the easing will be cut back. Now we're looking on the shorter time frame on the 4 hourly at the moment. There may be a bit of divergence occurring there with the RSI, but it's still on very low figures, and it may just drift. Now we've got the daily pivot above, and it's often a draw for me, of course, but with the strength that we've seen in this downward movement, I'd be very careful in terms of what's going on there and would look to trade it maybe later in the day, but certainly not now. So that pretty much sums things up. It's a day of waiting most likely, but we may get some buzz. As I said, the ranges are quite tight. The data coming out later on, more so the statements and the press conferences will give us a bit of better guidance and may set things up for the next few days. That's it for me. Have a great day. Bye for now.